Good evening from the UK. It's 7 o'clock, just before 7 o'clock. We're so eager to get going. On Is it 7 o'clock? 6 o'clock. I said 7 o'clock the other day, and it was 6 o'clock because I've set up this short story and poetry Saturdays. But we've gained an hour, so it's actually the old 5 o'clock. But anywho, so it's a few minutes to 6 on a Tuesday evening, 31st of March, April tomorrow. And I'm delighted to be joined by Eric here from the States. So it's lunchtime over there in the US. And Manolita, not that far. You're Buckinghamshire as well?
Yes,
Not that far.
yes,
Yeah,
have books.
not that far away from me here in Aylesbury. So I'm going to start with Eric. We're going to go alphabetically, so I will have a turn at the end to introduce ourselves and say what we write, and then we'll talk about our writing processes. Eric, over to you. Welcome back. It's not been that
Thank
long,
you.
less than a week, I think. You can see we're here
Yep,
last
just about a
Thursday.
week.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm Eric Goebelbecker. Like you said, over in the US, it's just about 1 p.m. Beautiful weather too. I write science fiction. I have three books in a series called Great War of the Worlds. That's a follow-on to H.G. Wells' original War of the Worlds. I'm currently working on a new fantasy series that doesn't really have a name yet, at least not a name that's not too silly to share. And but my big thing is alternate history. That's where a lot of my inspiration comes from, which I'll talk about, is looking at history and asking questions like, what if this or that happened?
Okay, thank you. Manolita, welcome. This is your. I put a shout out this morning in the local Society of Authors group for anybody who wanted to join the panel this evening. And Manolita put her head above the parapet. And so we had a quick chat this afternoon. And now you're here for real. Welcome to your
Yeah,
first
thank you
panel.
very much.
One of many, I hope.
I hope so too. So I write under the name MS Clements, and I have one novel out, which is a literary novel called The Third Magpie, and it's a dystopian love story set in a fictional country that has become authoritarian over time, and it deals with a couple coping with the restrictions on their life, and then things happen.
Hey, and
As it does.
it's quite a big book. You were telling me earlier on. It's
Yes,
130.
it's 137,000 words, so it's quite a tome, but it it starts off quite slowly as we get to know because it's a fictional country. I want you to get to know the country, the place, the environment.
Mm.
Um, Unlike dystopia, it's not dark post-apocalyptic. This is a beautiful countryside,
Right.
and I specifically went for that because it's different to what we think of as dystopia.
Sure.
I think the thought that what hit me in the writing process was dystopia can be beautiful.
Mm. But you quite often see
Um,
films, don't you, where something a world event has happened, and
mm,
people are there, and the scenery is beautiful, and it's
yeah,
sort of ironic that all this terror has gone. I mean, Eric is the perfect person to actually have
yes,
as the trio on this panel, um, writing you say alternate history and War of the Worlds esque,
yeah.
very similar to that kind of idea. Um,
Uh, I have a short story that's available. It's called I Often Remember, and that is an elderly lady looking back on her life as a spinster in Cambridge
right. Oh,
and a
nice.
certain event that changed her life.
Okay. And how long is that short story?
It's about 5,000 words, so it's
Okay.
what I would call a coffee time read. It's a very
Right.
quick read,
Sure.
going back and forth from Monday to
Right.
her during the war.
Okay. And do you write short stories generally? Is you have others or
Um, I write some shortish stories
mm,
for another writing group. So we
okay.
have a monthly prompt, and I will often write a short story or a poem. But I wouldn't say I am. I need practice on that front.
Okay, okay.
I
And
prefer
it's
to have more than 2,000 words rather than under 2,000.
right. See, I'm the opposite. If somebody says write a 150 word story, yeah, no problem. I can do that. Write a 5,000 word story, and I'm kind of okay. Yeah, I can do that. And then I find it comes out at 2.5, and I go,
Mm.
okay, I'm going to have to add something that is meaningful, not just padding it out to 2,000.
Yeah, I think
I'm the opposite.
it, it's a skill to pull your words to really sort of bring it down to
Mm,
condense it to the absolute core.
yeah.
Um, Whereas I like to explore the different avenues and go off and describe things. So different writers,
Well,
different
I mean,
techniques.
it's very much dependent on what you're writing, because you're
Yeah.
both writing worlds. Eric, we know from the War of the Worlds films that we've seen, and the original ones, the Tom Cruise ones. We've got an idea of the world, War of the Worlds. So what gave you the idea of were you a big fan of the movies and just decided that would
Honestly,
be nice to continue it?
well, I don't know if there's a movie that's actually faithful to the setting of the
Right.
original story, because the original story is set in the UK.
Oh, is it?
Um,
Okay,
Woking, I think most of it happens in Woking.
right. Sorry.
Mhm.
If that, I think that's in there a few times. Um, I was more of a fan of the actual original short. I guess you call it a novella than any of the movies. There is a movie in the 50s, a very American take that is legendary because the effects are stunning for whatever it was, 1957.
Mm,
But in Hollywood fashion, they shoehorned a love story in there that just doesn't belong.
no.
Um, but really, I kind of sort of backed in, maybe sideways into that because what I was researching was World War One.
Okay.
And I've got a story about World War One with my grandfather that I'll tell someday.
Mm,
Um, and I just kind of like, can I tackle this from another angle to just build up some skills? And
mm.
I can't tell you what made me think of the Martians showing up on the Battle of the Somme, but it just went from there.
Wow.
And ended up more of a political story than a war story anyway.
I think I've
Um,
sorry. I think I've asked you this before, but your books are about normal length, about 80,000 words, are they?
no, well, the first one is 98,000,
Okay.
if that, I think. And the other two are actually a lot shorter. The
Right.
second is about 70, and the third actually ended up at 50,
Okay.
and that had more to do with I if I had written what that third book was supposed to be, it probably would have been 180,000. And science fiction genre, people don't go for the big tomes. That's more fantasy, where you're going for the
Yes.
bigger,
Yes.
or literary fiction, like Michael Chabon's one of my favorite literary fiction authors.
Mm,
He writes these voluminous tomes. A science fiction writer is just not going to finish that. Even Dune, which is a pretty epic book, I think is only about 100,000 words.
right.
So I kind of had to just take the two or three plot lines that I could fit into that size, and that's what I ended up going with.
Mm. I'm going.
So,
I mean, obviously, we're here to talk about process, but I will be going off at
right.
tangents every now and then. Do you think size matters these days? Because I don't know whether you sell more paperbacks than ebooks, Eric. Because if people are seeing it on, say, on Tim, my husband, reads sci-fi on an iPad, and so he only knows how long it is by the percentage at the bottom. And for him, the bigger the better. I don't know whether you're ever conscious of thinking, oh
I
no,
sell many. I sell orders of magnitude more ebooks than paperbacks. Like thousands of ebooks and probably hundreds, if even, of paperbacks.
mm,
And it's interesting that you say that because I will look at rough size before I start a book based on what's going on in my life. Like right now, I'm reading a pretty long book only because I love this author's voice and I want his voice in my head as I write. And that is part of my process is
Okay.
strategically deciding who I'm going to read while I'm writing. Like
Right.
if I'm stuck, it's William Gibson. Absolutely. And he
Okay.
does tend to write medium length books,
Because
but I,
a lot of authors are the opposite. They don't want to be influenced by other writers in case they get,
Mm,
certainly not plagiarizing. I would never be able to plagiarize anybody. I don't have as good a memory
right.
to remember. And if there's something I particularly like, I always put where it's from, so I know that it's not something I came up with.
Well, eh, I'm going based on voice. So
Mhm.
like right now, the story I'm writing um, is very much again alternate history. And actually, if it's about anything, it's about the witch burnings of the 1500s in Germany.
Right.
I guess if I had to say what it's about, that's part of the milieu. This is about artificial intelligence, octopus intelligence, and the sea.
Okay.
So if I plagiarize something from this guy, it'll be a simile.
Yeah.
It's not going to be
No.
any plot points or anything like that. And
Yeah.
William Gibson, again, it's very cyberpunk. I love reading cyberpunk. I would rather chew glass than write it.
Right.
So that's just, so that I don't worry about that.
No.
Me personally, I can't imagine not reading as I'm writing.
No. Because it
Be-
also it gets you in the frame of mind for, because whenever I go
right.
to book festivals, I sit there thinking I'm really loving this, but I should be home writing. And then when I'm at home, the last thing I do is writing. I'm always
Yeah.
doing other
Right.
stuff. Um, and so yeah, I think writers should be readers. Absolutely.
uh, uh,
You know,
uh, completely.
yeah.
I find it's very hard to incorporate reading during the day because you're busy.
Mhm.
And at night, I have some eyesight issues, which means that if I wanted to read text,
Mhm.
it would take me a long time to get through the book. So I've become an avid audio
Yeah,
listener.
I love
So
all.
I can be gardening, listening to a story. I can be in bed, listening to a story. I can be cooking, listening to a story. And you become more and more pulled into the story, depending obviously on the actor who's narrating and the words. But um, that has been a life changer for me,
Mm.
having audiobooks.
What do you listen to
Yep.
them on?
Uh, I,
Device.
my phone,
Okay.
my phone.
Right.
So it's just on my phone, and I use Audible, Spotify, Libby. There's another one, Borrowbook,
Right.
and all of them. So I must get through about 20 to 30 a year.
Okay.
And some I listen to. If I've listened to it and enjoyed it during the day, those tend to be the ones I listen to at night because
Right.
I find it very
Carry on
comforting
going.
to fall asleep to.
Yeah.
But if it's a
Yeah.
new one, then I tend to listen to that one during the day so I can concentrate on it more. And
Mm,
yes, you do get the author's voice
mm,
as you're listening. So for me, writers like Daphne du Maurier, um, they're all going out of my head at the moment.
that's all
Graham
right.
Greene,
Right.
uh, Dorothy L. Sayers is another one I
Yeah.
particularly like.
Yeah.
Uh, so they're sort of, you do get some elements of their voice, but
Mm.
I don't think it necessarily affects my voice. If you get the drift, I have my own.
Inspired by.
It's inspired,
Yeah.
and probably the reason I like them is because there are similarities in their voice to my voice.
Mm,
And there are, the way I would say that Daphne du Maurier, she is much more descriptive, whereas you get with Graham Greene, you get more of this tension and this underlying anger and tension in his writing.
mm.
And with Dorothy L. Sayers, it's just fun. So there is a fun element in it. So yeah, and
It's
it's
Graham Greene.
definitely when I was writing Magpie, I would read very because it people were saying, "Oh, this is dystopian," and I was reluctant to say it was dystopian But I did read some dystopian books at the time, and I felt it was closer to sort of Margaret Atwood
Well, I
than
was
it
thinking that when
was.
you were, yes, when you were describing it, I was thinking of
Yeah,
Handmaid's
it's
Tale.
much more in the Margaret Atwood
Mm.
vein,
Well,
rather than
that's not done her any harm.
no, no. I do have a story about Margaret Atwood and when that book came out.
Oh dear, go do share.
So I was a teenager working in a university bookshop in Exeter at the time, and her book had come out in the States. I would have thought maybe 4 or 5 years previously,
Mm.
and it was available in the UK, but it was very much a literary book on the verge. It wasn't well known,
Mm.
and the manager of the bookshop had obviously read it, and I was a shy teenager, and he called me over to the women's section of the bookshop, and I thought, oh, I'm in trouble here, because he literally slammed this book into my hand and said, "You've got to read this.
Wow,
This will change your life." And
wow,
I don't think he realized that 40 years later, it literally did
wow.
change my life.
It exploded
So, yeah.
when the TV series came out, didn't it?
Yes, and it was
Link
also then I
between-
think at that time was when it went on to the A level syllabus.
Right.
So that coincided, and then yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely it exploded, and all of her
Yeah.
writing exploded. But it was very much a literary on the fringe of
Right.
what people might read.
Sure.
I remember my goddaughter reading it and thinking, is that entirely appropriate for an 18 for a
Right.
17-year-old to read?
Yeah.
But then, yeah, life changes.
Absolutely. Eric, I think you were going to say something about Graham Greene.
I was confusing him with another author, and I looked and I was wrong.
Oh, okay.
But
All right.
I would say that in terms of voice, I 100% agree. For me specifically, like again, if I need a voice in my head, I, left to my own devices, will not describe things. I will very often be very dry because I have 30 plus years of technical writing where
Mm.
it's very much you're trying to be as precise. And so at a certain point, I will read, I'll go back and read what I read the day before, and I'll be like, I need some Gibson because nobody in a William Gibson novel just drinks a cup of tea.
Right.
You're going to hear about the cup. You're going to hear about the tea. You're going to know how much sugar is in it. Depending on, he'll pick some aspect of that. He's really into design, and that goes into nobody just has a toaster. They have a toaster that, I can't come up with it right now,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
exactly the curve and the shape
Right.
and the texture and the material. So, if I ever plagiarize William Gibson, it would be a freaking miracle because it's going to go through my very dry computer programmer filter
Yeah.
before it
Yeah.
makes it to the keyboard.
It's a fine
So,
line. It's a fine
yeah.
line, isn't it, when you're writing? How much detail do you put in? Because I'm a huge fan of dialogue. So if I
Mm.
Right,
turn a page and there's 2 pages of description, I whiz through it until I get onto the dialogue. Because for me, dialogue is
right,
character and description is narrator.
right.
And so it's the pace for me. Um, so, but I think some readers won't want much to disturb the plot, whereas other readers will like to take their time and how much detail do you give, because you still need to leave the reader to imagine the world.
Yes, it's
Right,
about
right,
visualization
Mm.
of each
right.
page and how you go about that. That is your author voice. That's how much detail you go into
Mm.
describing the clothes, the outfits. For instance, I'm currently writing a book set in 1989, and it's a garden party, and I describe the women in flowing Laura Ashley, which is for me captures that picture immediately. I know exactly where I am and what I am and what sort of day it is.
Sure.
Um, Maybe outside the UK, people might not understand necessarily what I mean when I say flowing Laura Ashley,
Mm.
but it's very specific to the UK.
Well, you have the context, don't you? I think in any scene, and my job as an editor is to make sure that there's enough context within the scene, so that you don't have to explain what Laura Ashley is, that it's by
Yeah,
the fact
exactly.
that it's floral, or floral dress, that that's enough. You can just picture it. Manolita, you were saying about listening to audiobooks when you're gardening or cooking, or do you listen to anything when you're writing?
No.
Okay, so you have
So
silent.
when I am absolutely not. So when I am writing scenes, that's silence.
Okay.
Uh, when I am about to edit it, then I can have classical music in the background,
Mm.
but classical music that suits the scene.
Okay.
And then when it's down to the fine editing, silence.
Right.
Because I then, at that point, I'm listening to the voice of the scene.
Okay.
What's happening in the scene? What are the people saying?
Mm.
And I want to be, and any little tiny errors that need to jump out, I need to be able to hear those.
And
Reading
how?
it, but I need to hear it in my head.
Yeah. And how are you hearing? Are you reading it aloud? Are you getting the computer to read it out to you?
I do. I used to use, it's not very good. I used to use the read aloud function
Okay.
because that way you do pick up errors very quickly.
Mm.
Um, uh, you have Natural Reader and all the other ones, which have much better voice, but they're very limited.
Mm.
So I don't think anything really beats just reading it out loud if you can
Yeah.
sort of chuck everyone out of the house so they can't hear.
Because I find your brain, especially if it's something you've written, I think it's different if I'm reading something that somebody has sent to me.
Yeah,
You will fill in gaps. I have
absolutely. You will
a,
jump the errors.
I have a Kindle Fire, and so I either drag and drop or email the file Word document to the Kindle, and it will read it out. And you can pause it, and it's much
Mm.
easier, especially when I'm doing a first sweep, because I'm looking for things. As soon as I hear something that often I come across, so it might be well in dialogue. Well, I don't know. Well, maybe. So as soon as I come
The
across the first
repetition.
one, I pause the Kindle Fire and then look for all the wells, and then I start it up again. So I'm all over the document. So at
Yeah.
the read aloud, yes, I pause it, but sometimes I'm still skipping over the document while I'm listening to it, because it's then sort of a semi-automated process.
Yes.
But the first sweep, certainly, I'm listening to for the plot rather
Yeah.
than any errors as such. But yes, I think it's important to have it allowed. Eric, how about you? What do you listen to something when
Music is really important to me, and I have to have music.
you?
So when I'm drafting, um, probably listening to some kind of ambient drone background noise music. I might go into classical. Problem is, I like classical too much, and I will break off and be listening to the
Right.
classical. Um, or sometimes, depending on what kind of motivation I need, I might break into some rock to get myself moving. Like the second book has a lot of tank battle scenes, and I was definitely listening to some metal for some of that. Um, for it's interesting you talk about having the document read to you. I'm changing my process right now with this fourth book, and I'm in a writer group that meets every other week. And one of the other writers is also a technologist, and she's been playing around with programs that will read to her. And she's found a couple versions that have some notion of adding some emotion to it and not just drone
Mm,
that I may borrow from her if I can get it running on my computer
right.
to read chapters back to me because I agree. Um, your brain just puts in the words that you miss. I have a great editor and she catches a lot of that too.
Because there's
Um,
also things like Through Though Thought Trough, where they look
right.
very similar on the
Yeah.
page.
Mm.
She does make me laugh. I say she. I have a female voice, Kate, on the Kindle, and it does sound, because I've been using this for years, so I've got used to the voice. So it doesn't feel robotic to me. But there are certain words that she does only pronounces one way. So she'll say the wind blew through the trees, or
Right.
he had a wound on his arm, and so that makes me chuckle, and I carry on. But I'm a classical music, and I have an Amazon. I'm not going to say the model that it is, but I have an Amazon device, and there's a station called classical focus. I have it written down so I remember how what to ask for. So I say play the device name, play classical focus, and then it will only play classical music with no words in it, because I can't have words. I don't know how people write in a cafe with so much going on. I'd just be sitting and watching everybody for however 2 hours.
I have done that. I have gone to a cafe to write new scenes, and I quickly can focus out. So if they're, I am concentrating on the scene. I also find it useful when you're looking up and you're looking at people, and suddenly you'll see a tiny detail which you think, oh, I could use that detail. It's
Yeah.
how a person is constantly turning the spoon in their cup or something without actually in between drinking, and or how they sit in a seat. So I do find being writing outside the house useful when I'm particularly writing descriptive scenes.
Right.
Yeah.
And what do either of you write by hand? Do you ever write by hand? Have you written by hand, Eric?
Not in many, many years. My hands don't work well.
Right.
Typing is a lifesaver for me. But and actually, I was just on another call with the Science Fiction Writers Association Sunday night, and one of the authors there writes her entire drafts by hand,
Really?
and I think she's an absolute hero. My hands would fall off.
No.
No way.
I'm the same. I'm so slow when I'm writing. If I'm making notes or anything, and yes, if you write too long, it then does
Right.
wear your hands
I
out.
I'll
find writing
use
by
note.
hand is a good way to experiment,
Mm.
but I've often forgotten what I've written when I write by hand. So it's sort of then going, now what? So I've done pages and pages, and it's almost like a verbal vomit. Sort of, you're just getting it all on the page.
Yes.
But I wouldn't put that on the laptop. I would then take those ideas and just write a completely different thing
Because apparently
from that.
we use different parts of our brain for handwriting and typing. So it's a shame we can't create the same thing twice to see how different they would be. But no,
Right.
I'm a my favorite. This chair is my comfortable place. I did my back in just before Christmas, moving a sofa as you do on your own, because you just decided at the last minute you'd rearrange the lounge. And so I spent Christmas Day horizontal, and Boxing Day, this was once I could sit. This was my most comfortable place. So I sit at an iMac, or I have Word on my laptop.
Mm.
So I'm for sure. But I dictate into my phone. I have notes. I have an iPhone.
Yeah.
So I have the notes, which then links up to my Gmail. And so I can dictate into my phone and then just copy and paste from the email to onto the
I
computer.
know I know that has become more popular these days, where just dictating it, getting an idea, and as you say, just dictate onto a note and then come back to it later. That's become far more popular. I still a bit of self-consciousness coming in there.
Right.
I still can't. I have tried it, but I'm not very good at it.
Years ago, I tried
Yeah.
the Dragon software, but I found, even though I don't think I have an accent, it just looking at the screen as I was dictating, it was slower than I was dictating, but also it was getting so many words wrong that
Mm.
I'd spend twice as long editing it as I would dictating,
Yeah.
and I just no. But I love the idea, Eric, of your that your friend who writes the whole draft by hand, because I've heard people do that so that then when they type it up, that's like their first edit. and there's some
Yeah,
sort of
yeah.
connection between the paper and the screen that
That
way.
was interesting. Yeah, because we had this Friday night. Oh God, Sunday night was supposed to be getting together to do a couple sprints, and it actually turned into this kind of discussion over process.
Mm,
And there was, she wrote everything out in these notebooks, and then, like you said, when she transferred it into her computer, that was her first pass.
yeah,
Somebody else, a few other people said they almost completely throw away their first draft
really.
and rewrite it, which I'm just like, again, the programmer in me is like, that is so inefficient.
Yeah.
And part of what this discussion came from was about AI. It's the law. We must talk about AI.
Absolutely.
Um,
Yes.
and
Inevitable.
there are short story venues, and I'm about to try short stories. I've got about 14 that will never see the light of day.
Okay.
But when I finish this book, I want to submit a few.
Okay.
Um,
Well,
where
both.
some of the
Sorry, I was just going to say both of you. Then I do short story and poetry Saturdays. So at some
oh
point, do bear
yeah
them in mind. That was part of my reason for asking you earlier on when he did
oh
it
oh
about writing
the,
short stories.
there
Sorry.
are a few venues now that in an effort to prove that you didn't use AI
Mm,
want to see several drafts
right.
because that's the only way they can think to counteract the idea that you just told AI, write me 5,000 words about a
Mm,
woman working in her garden, whatever. Um, and a few of them were like me, were like, you've got to be kidding me. I don't even have revisions turned on. I draft and then I go through a few times until I like it. Then when I send it to my editor, you'll actually have those two. You'll have what I sent to her and what I got back.
sure.
Um, and but some people apparently they'll throw the first one away. I guess they have one in one screen and transpose to the other.
Right.
Makes my head hurt just thinking about it.
I save
Uh,
different versions, so I'll have version 1.0 and then so mainly because if something happens, and I have an external hard drive attached to my writing computer, which is on my left here, and so I always have a backup of everything just in case. Um,
I'm a
The
compulsive
Magpie, I
deleter.
had 24 versions.
did you? Because
There's,
also you never know, especially if you're going to chop out chunks and then
yeah.
think, oh, actually, I really liked that. Maybe I should have put that
What?
in.
Well, if I'm about to do major surgery, yes, I would do a backup. But since I have this computer we're talking on, and it is backed up to the cloud and to a file server I have in the basement, and
Mm,
it's also synced to I'm a hardware guy. I've got like 4 laptops I might be writing on at any minute. I
right.
don't worry about making, sequential copies like that. But
Yes.
yes, if I were to say maybe I should move chapter 7 up to chapter 4,
Mm,
that would be make a backup real quick in case LibreOffice decides to explode.
yeah.
That would be the kind of thing that I would
Yeah.
do.
And
Yeah.
Eric, do you ever, when it comes to editing, do you ever print? Because I know some people love the red pen or green pen. When I was teaching adult learning, and although my students were learners because they learn, they don't study, because my learners were aged 19 upwards, so in theory they could have handled a red pen. I had to use green pens because they were um, less nasty. Um, but I think there's something quite therapeutic. So I have my works in progress printed out on just on the back of scrap paper in files so that I can take them out into the garden on a nice day and then go through it with the red pen. Do you ever do anything? Or is yours just on being a computer man, Eric? You do
Sometimes I will.
everything.
Yeah. Sometimes I will. And I've got highlighters. I like the gel ones that aren't actually ink because they don't run. I might do that, but I will catch myself if I find a whole bunch of errors, opening it on one of my laptops
Right.
and making the change by hand. And again, the programmer workflow. I'm this first book, this fourth book is the first one where I'm trying to break out of that workflow.
Mm.
But I very much have that kind of a workflow where you're iteratively,
Mm.
can you say that in New Jersey? Iteratively go through the same thing over and over and over again is more how I'm used to working.
Because I think often
Um,
also it's to do with time. If your brain thinks, well, I'm doing this once, but then how we edit at least twice, don't we?
Right.
that if you're editing on paper
Hmm.
and then sorting it out from the paper onto the
Yeah,
screen.
no, I did do that. So when I got close to where I was, I would say 80% happy with the manuscript, I printed the entire manuscript out,
Mm,
had it bound, and then went through it with a pencil,
right.
sort of going through, what did I think worked, what didn't work,
Mm,
and then from that, I systematically went through the laptop version.
mm.
But I've still got that one tucked up there
Okay.
as a souvenir. So
Um,
yeah, no, I have to print it out. I'd like to have it printed out so I can be sitting down comfortably somewhere in the garden or wherever and just pick
sure.
up a page and look at the page.
Yeah. When
Actually,
oh, see, yeah, carry on.
I was going to say, now that I think about it, with the third book,
Mm,
and it's only been a few months ago, and I'm already forgot that I did build an EPUB, put it on my e-reader, and went through it and did some notes
okay.
in the e-reader. I use a Books e-reader. I don't use a Kindle. Um, and it has an open.
Tiny, isn't it? Oh no, the one.
Oh, that's the
Yeah,
other
you
one.
showed me
That's
something the other
okay.
day that was tiny, little
Oh,
black.
so there. This is the one for
Yeah.
dog training. Right. This one I can hide and read without the manager seeing.
Okay.
No, this is e-reader that I will use for like proper e-reading. Like when I do my bike tour in a couple months, this is what'll be with me.
Mm,
I'm going to a wedding next week, and yeah, I'll be reading.
mm.
This one, there's an e-reader called Moon Reader for Android that you can annotate.
Okay.
So that was similar to what you're saying, where I would annotate on there. But here again, I probably got halfway through and my brain was like, must get to computer, must make changes now.
Yeah,
And
I
that
do
kind of
like that.
broke the process for me.
Yes.
Um,
This didn't
you
didn't
know,
um didn't Margaret Atwood come up? She invented a something you could sign ebooks because she was being asked. I don't know whether it's something to do with lockdown or whether it was before that. I think she'd come up with a device where she could remotely, maybe I'm making it up, where she could
I didn't know.
remotely sign books. I don't
oh,
know. There was something in the press some years ago.
I do know some
interesting.
friends whose books also came out during COVID, so they couldn't have book launches,
Mm,
and they basically signed a frontispiece,
right.
which you would send to whoever
Yeah.
had it, and then
Yeah.
could stick it in their book.
Right.
I think
So,
Sanderson was doing that when he released those on Kickstarter. Yeah.
yeah.
That
Yeah, I think he was
Brandon.
doing that. Red,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Brandon Sanson. Yeah. Mm. So have you changed, Eric? Have you found over your books that your process has changed from one book to? I know you said book four. You'd done something slightly different doing your EPUB.
Immensely. The first book, I had an outline, so I knew what I was deviating from.
Mm,
But that outline was very unstructured and a bit of a mess.
mm,
The second book was probably largely the same way. What I've settled on between the third book and what I'm doing now is I gave up on Scrivener a while ago. I just don't know how people work in that horrible thing.
mm.
And the big problem I have with Scrivener is it doesn't have a good mechanism to send something to an editor or a critique group and get back their comments. It doesn't know how to, you have to basically export to Word and there's no way really to bring it back in.
Yes, I've used both.
Right. So
Yeah,
it's
I've
kind of
used
adding to my
Scrivener
tool
as
chain.
well.
Yeah. I found a tool that, the big thing with Scrivener is that ability to play around with the cards
Yeah,
and
I
have a
love that.
different buffer for each chapter. There's
Mm,
a tool called Plotter, Plottr, no E,
okay.
that allows you to outline similar to Scrivener.
Mm.
Okay.
And it's very free form. It's got a lot of bells and whistles, but I'm able to map out a timeline with cards.
Mm,
So my character who's effectively immortal. I have a timeline of him going back to when I decided he was born to the present time, and I can have a card saying, I want him to be here for this historical event. I want him to be in the room when Gutenberg creates the printing press. I want him to be, and all that.
sure.
Then you can go in and also map out a book and they allow you to import templates from things like Save the Cat or the hero's journey or whatever formula you like, and then fill in the blanks.
Mm.
And then you can even add to each chapter your own little thing. So every chapter I write, I have like 5 questions that I have to answer for that chapter to succeed in my mind and propel the narrative forward.
Okay.
Um,
Do they
that's the
differ?
one.
Do they differ, those 5 questions, or are they sort of set
No, they're
questions?
pretty much the 5 questions. I worked with a coach at one point, and one of the big things I took away from her was she had Google Doc templates that she had you fill out before you drafted a chapter, and I sort of digested those down to 5 questions.
Okay.
Why are we here? What does he want? I'm a big fan of Vonnegut. When a guy wakes up, he has to at least want to drink a glass of water. That one speech he gave.
Okay.
Why is he? What does he want? Why can't he
Yeah.
get it?
Yeah.
What's the point? And what happened? That sort of thing.
Sure.
Um, and what you can do from Plotter is then export your outline either as a PDF, as a Word doc, or it will play nice with Scrivener if you want. The big change I made with book 4 is, speaking of printing out, I print out the outline for the chapter.
Ah.
It's kind of bullet points, and I'm drafting on a free write. I don't know if you're familiar with them.
No.
Electric.
On a what, sorry?
Free write.
Free write. It's an electric typewriter.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes,
So
I've seen that. Yes. So you have no distractions.
yeah, I have no distractions. The keyboard is amazing because I like an old-fashioned clackety-clack keyboard. My
Right.
wife sleeps down the hall with earplugs in because of me
Yeah.
typing.
Okay.
And then what the free write will do is it will sync with a cloud app, and then you can take out what you've written again, either as Word or
Mm,
to Dropbox or to Google Docs or whatever you want.
sure.
So I'm drafting a chapter at a time into these separate buffers. And I get the Scrivener effect where I don't have all my eggs in one basket.
Mm,
I can only really lose one chapter at a time. And then my next pass will be assembling these into a single document.
okay.
When I'm working with my one critique group, I'll pick a chapter and polish that one up and
Mm,
share it with them when the time comes.
mm,
So that's the big change I'm making is the no distractions, right? Even my music is not on the computer. I have an old-fashioned MP3 player.
okay.
That's also my headphone amplifier. Um, and I can't go back and play. If I feel some resistance, I'm having problems with a scene, I would go back and mess with another scene. I can't do that.
Right.
I'll actually put this computer to sleep
Yeah.
and force myself through whatever I'm afraid of. I'll
Sure.
make myself finish it.
Yeah. And I like the idea of the 5 questions. I do a podcast every day called 300 Words because my favorite statistic is 300 words a day is 109,500 words a year in a
Oh wow.
non-leap year. And so I do every day. There's a writing prompt, and then I split that down into the who, what, where, when, why, and how. And I do mentoring as well, and I say if you can answer, so they do the character's journey. So
Right.
the main characters write their journey from the start of the novel. So it's although they're not big plotters, they don't want to plot particularly. The couple I'm working with at the moment, but I said, well, if this is all you have, who are your characters? What's happened? Where are they? How do they get out of it? Or how has this come up? However you want to interpret those prompts. And then once you've got who your main characters are, then you give them a timeline for each one. And that for them, that's all they need, because they really want to just discovery, right? Just want to start to get the idea and run with it, the old pantser. So yes, I think
I was very definitely with Magpies. I was a complete pantser.
right.
Um, I I wrote it, as I told you earlier. I wrote it on my old phone
Mm,
uh, while the girls were at school. So I just sit down, have a coffee, write a scene, and come back and write another scene. And in 4 weeks, I had the sketch of of a novel.
Mm.
Um, and then it's interesting, it was there was no planning whatsoever in it.
Mm.
Whereas now I can see the benefit of planning.
Mm.
Um, Sometimes I will write scenes which I know will not be in the novel, but what I'm doing with those scenes is building on my character, building the setting,
Mm.
so that when I do include elements of it within the novel, I know I can see it, I know it,
Mm.
and so
Right.
it I can pull that in, but it's not the whole scene is not coming into the novel.
And do
No,
you,
Um, I
yeah.
think that's my change.
right. Yes, I say I'm a plantzer because I've noticed as I go along, if I have some kind of structure beforehand, even if it's just a few pages, half a dozen pages, I stop less because I tend to work on two things at once. Because I write crime and women's fiction, so it tends to be working. I have uh, one of each on the go, at least one of each on the go. And I now find when I get to a point I don't know what's happening, I'll either move on to a later scene, and I'll write more here. So once I finish the first draft, if I know I've got holes, then I'll look for more here, and then I can fill them in because I've got so many, the
Yes.
rest of the structure.
Yeah.
And then I move on to the other work in progress. Um, but I'm just wondering whether you said you were writing with when your girls were at school. Do you have set times? Are you a
Mm.
morning writer or an evening writer or on a commute? Or, I mean, you work from home, but
Um,
certain people have certain times of the
I
day that they
used
like.
to find that I would write quite well after lunch. These days it tends to be before lunch. I'm just too tired by the. If I've had a busy day, I know I'm going to be too tired to look at the computer, so nothing gets written on those days. So I am most productive if I can have breakfast, bring and come straight into the office and start writing straight away. And then if by lunchtime I'm content with that, then I'll leave it. If not, I might come back for an hour or two after lunch.
Mm.
Very occasionally, I might come in at say 8 o'clock and do a couple of hours then.
Mm.
But they're nowhere are they as productive as those morning sessions. For
And
me, the
that's
morning sessions are the best.
yeah, and that's your dedicated space where you are now.
It is now. It used to be my daughter's study. It is now my study.
Okay. Oh,
So
good.
yes.
Yes,
So
because we've
now
seen
I have
it
it
with
all set
my
up for
office.
me.
Yeah. No, I think we need
Yeah.
that. And do you have a target? I'd like to either you're very strict with yourself, right? I have to write 1,000 words today. Or do you think, well, I'd like to do this scene. If I get any more than that, that's great. Do you set sort of
Yeah.
targets for
Definitely
yourself?
the second.
Mm.
Because I think if I say I have to write 1,000 words, or there have been days when I've written 5 or 6,000 words,
Mm.
and I've been very happy with it. And other days I'll write 400 words, and the next day I think, no, that's all rubbish.
Right.
So for me, it's more about just working through scenes. Am
Mm.
I happy with this scene? And then move on to the next scene. I try to get a scene finished. And for me, that's the important thing.
Right.
Because then I can move on. I can take that scene and move on to the next one.
Right. Because some people stop half mid sent well mid sentence. So if they write late at
Yeah,
night, they'll
no,
stop mid sentence so they can just pick up and carry on, sort of carry on the flow the following day. Um,
I can't always guarantee I will be doing writing the next day. So by the time I do get back to it, I will have forgotten what I've written
yeah,
if I
yeah,
did that.
yeah. How about you, Eric? Do you have a set time of? I mean, clearly this is your office, um, your
Yep.
writing your
Uh,
writing space.
for the best time for me is very first thing. Get up, make a cup of coffee, sit down. Much to my dog's chagrin, she'll be guilting me because
So
she's not
before the
being
dog
fed.
walk.
Before the dog walk, and
Okay,
she's starting to get the hang of it since I lost my day job. And
right.
then the birds will start making a racket too after a while because they know I'm up.
Okay.
But for me, first thing in the morning, because I wake up and I will very often wake up and within minutes, I'm hearing or thinking the scene that I want to write. It's the same thing. I either want to finish a scene or a chapter depending upon what's going on. So I have the outlines that I'm getting from Plotter are three-quarters of the scenes that I think I'm going to write are mapped out. Now that might change. I may get to a point where it just didn't make sense, or actually Sunday, my one character changed a lot in my head. I'm making him a heck of a lot more angrier and afraid than I thought he would be.
Right.
And that's going to definitely change what's going to happen with him.
Sure.
But I will want to tackle that scene. And that might be a 400 word scene where I'm just conveying a very important point, or it may be 3 or 4,000 words that are very easy to write because it's a scene that I thought of 20 years ago. Because a lot of what I'm writing right now, I was thinking about, God, I'm old, 30 years ago when I was in the Army. This story was running around in my head.
Wow.
Yeah, that's the way it is. What's very unhealthy for me is I could probably start writing around 11 p.m. and go for a couple hours and then wake up at 6 a.m. and then go for a couple hours. And I know if I did that, I'd weigh 700 pounds and die of a heart attack.
Okay.
So I have to kind of rein that in and just stick to the mornings.
And do you find, I mean, this is probably how long is a piece of string, but do you find as you get into the story, because you have planned the whole thing to a certain extent, do you find do you get quicker as you write along, as you get through the story, or it varies?
Actually, when I hit the second part, the second half, is that the beginning of the third act in Save the Cat? I think it's around the third act. I usually hit a wall.
Or do you?
Yeah, because I have a beginning in mind. That's easy. I have a midpoint in mind, and I have a final image in mind. And sometimes getting from one to the other is the hard part. Like for the third book, I really, really wanted to have a few things happen in a certain place in New Jersey, as an homage to Orson Welles' famous War of the Worlds radio program. And I could not get the characters over there in any kind of a believable way. And I ended up having to compromise. Spent a couple days in the New York Public Library looking at old maps and found a reasonable substitute right on the other side of the Hudson River. And getting through that and kind of, finally got me over the thing. Because again, I'm not doing space opera. I'm trying to say, what if this guy was never elected president? Or what if Martians invaded and dropped dead and left laser guns laying around with fun people like the Kaiser? What would have happened? That would have been interesting. And I know it's hard to say that believable, but believable.
Sure.
So I'm not going to have wild horses in South Jersey, that kind of thing. So, but yeah, I will get stuck getting to that end point. And usually once I either change that end point or figure something out, then it will start to flow again. But yeah, the first 2/3 is easy. And I remember years ago, I would see writers speak and they'd be like, "Oh, ideas are easy." And I'd be like, "Get out of here. Ideas aren't easy." And oh no, ideas are easy. Making them work, that's the hard part.
Yes.
Yeah. No, I have
And
a
putting in the
similar
work. Yeah.
I have a similar situation where so I've been working on this second novel for probably 4 or 5 years, and just developing the idea slowly. But I had this problem with two of the characters. I wanted them to meet in London in 1946, but I couldn't figure out how he would be in London, having while not remembering that he's not English. If you see what I mean, he doesn't remember he's English.
Right.
And in the end, she just flip it. Instead of him coming to England, she goes to France. And then it becomes much more just putting that character in France instead of in England really settles. And it's just sometimes it just happens. You sort of think, oh, why didn't I think of that before? Sort of, that makes it much easier to write. And with Magpie, again, you would be thinking about a scene for a long time, couldn't figure out why it wasn't working, and then suddenly flip it, change it, and then it'll work. Um, it's amazing how that just happens to you at the oddest times.
Mm.
And then you suddenly realize, okay, because your brain is working on your story while you're doing everything else, and then it'll just pop in your
Yep.
consciousness. The reason it's not working is because you've got them in the wrong place, or the reason it's not working is because that character is superfluous and isn't needed. Uh, and you're trying to shoehorn in a character that shouldn't be there.
Mm.
And your brain is constantly doing that in the background while you're doing other things. And occasionally, if you sit down and just let it come to the fore, it will
Because
it will happen.
I'm sure anybody who plots even to the extent of the Frederick Forsyth used to write a 300-page outline apparently
Mm,
for every book, and you kind of think, well, that's pretty much the book. And there must still be things, and I think this is the fun thing about writing, is that even if you've plotted to the nth degree, you'll get to a point, and either the character and anybody who doesn't write will think that
mm,
we're crazy. J.K. Rowling is when she was planning her 7-book series, I've never read that she said which character it was she wanted to kill off, but when she got to the scene in the last book where she was going to kill off a particular character, the character didn't want to be killed off, so she killed off a different character.
mm.
um
I had that.
and and so I think it's lovely when you think you're going to go one way, and actually, as you say,
Yeah,
your brain says, oh no, this is a much better idea.
I had
Yep.
that with my antagonist,
Mm,
and I remember distinctly waking up one night thinking, she wants her voice heard as well.
mm,
She doesn't want to be just considered the bad character, the bad girl.
mm,
There has to be some humanity in her somewhere.
mm,
Um, and so, yeah, then I ended up adding some things about her
mm.
and in the way that she spoke and things that she did to show
No.
that she wasn't just all bad.
Mm,
She was very much the Frankenstein monster of society. Society had created her.
mm. Well, they'd be two-dimensional, wouldn't they, if they were all good or all bad?
Yeah,
You have to have some
Yep.
3D features.
yeah.
Um, Eric, if you could go anywhere in the world to write, where would you go? Final question for this session, unless there's anything else you'd like to add.
I
You
don't know.
would you have it? You'd have a comfortable chair and a computer somewhere with a band, maybe your favorite band playing in the background.
Well, then I would just want to talk to them. No, that wouldn't work. I'd
Okay.
want to, yeah, because that would be like Marillion, and I'd want to talk to them about
Uh,
lyrics. Yeah.
I've seen
Um,
I've seen Marillion in Aylesbury, in
yeah.
what was the Civic Centre. They were my favourite band growing up around before the Kaylee, Grendel and Garden Party and
Yep. Oh yeah. Yeah, there you go. And Genesis. So
the
yeah, that
original.
won't work. That I'm
Yeah.
too much of a rock fan to go to
Okay.
that. I don't know. I know where I'd want to go for research. I would want to go where I was supposed to go this year, which is the World War One battlefields in France.
Right.
But to write, this is fine. I have no
Yeah.
excuses. I have it made.
Right.
Um, so I'm happy.
Good.
Thanks for asking. I
Well,
should realize
you're
that.
very welcome. You're very welcome. Well,
Yeah, thank you.
that's lovely to hear.
Yeah.
How about you, Manolita?
I think like Eric, I'm very lucky. I've got I live in the countryside, so more often than not, the only noise disturbing me is the bird song.
Mm,
Um, I would like to go back to my roots in Devon,
mm,
but I'm perfectly happy here. Uh, I'm not a traveler.
right.
Uh, I like to visit cities, but I don't like to go too far. I don't like to fly.
Yeah,
So I can't imagine myself on some tropical beach somewhere.
no, no.
Yeah.
Have you thought about, that was going to be the final question, but have you thought about which book you would, because with the Desert Island Discs, I don't know if you're familiar with Desert Island Discs, Eric. where
Yep.
you get a chosen book. Have you ever thought about Banalita, about the book
House on the
that you would
Strand
take?
by Daphne du Maurier.
Ah,
Yeah,
okay.
and I actually stayed in Tywardrath, which
Okay.
is
Is it
the
Cornwall?
Cornish for
Cornwall. Yeah.
House on the Strand. I
Right.
stayed in Tywardrath recently.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah. No, definitely
Right.
that's my favorite book.
Okay. I've set Eric thinking now.
Oh, that's a tough one because most of the books I really like are part of a series and I want the whole series with me.
Okay. Well, maybe
But
you
I
can have
guess
an omnibus. The omnibus of
Neil
something then.
Neil Stephenson's Cryptonomicon probably
Okay.
would be it.
Right.
That covers the alternate history, it covers the math, covers the
Yeah.
science.
Yeah. Well, I always used to think Roald Dahl's collected short stories. So if I could have two books, one would be Roald Dahl's collected short stories. Another one would be a color picture encyclopedia. So I could, and endless.
Oh,
My luxury would be if, because a computer, I think you can have a word processor on the desert island.
I think it's going to be backwards because, of course, it's a year, but this is from when I was 11, and I've still got it,
Oh,
and
well,
I would take
oh,
this with me.
right.
That's the Roger Thesaurus.
Yes.
yep.
It just smells of school.
Right.
It's
Oh, how
probably
lovely.
completely out of date, but
Yeah.
I still love looking through that.
Oh, how lovely. Well, it sounds like, and I think I could probably say this for every writer, that we are in the dream job. They say that if you find a job you love, you never work another day in your life. And I
Yep.
think we are very lucky creatures.
Yes, yes,
So thank you.
very
Eric
definitely
is now going
lucky.
to go off and are you going to do some gardening?
No, I've got to
No,
do dinner for the family.
Okay.
bike ride.
Bike
Bike.
ride.
Bike
You
ride.
did say it was a
It's
lovely
about
day and you were going
yep.
to head
It's about
out.
75 degrees Fahrenheit. I don't know what that is in centigrade.
Lovely.
I should know, but
I
it's
don't know.
beautiful.
I'm
Yeah.
I'm in the centigrade. Yeah. Well, thank you so
Okay.
much. Thank you, Melita, especially
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
for your first
Thank you.
panel. Very proud of you. You held your own very well. Thank you so
Thank you for
much.
having me.
Lovely
Thank
to
you.
see you again, Eric. I know you're
Lovely
booked
to
in.
meet you,
Okay.
Eric.
You're booked in for
Okay.
some
Yep. Good
others.
to meet you.
All right.
Okay.
We'll see you
Bye.
soon. Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye bye.
Bye.